I never meant to become the man everyone whispered about. It started with one stray, thin, frightened, shivering under my porch on a cold December night. I called him Benny. After my wife passed, the silence in the house was unbearable. Benny filled it with life again. His paws clicked across the floor, his tail thumped against the furniture, and his soft sighs at night reminded me that I wasn't completely alone. Then came another, and another. Word travels fast among strays, I guess. Before long, I had 6 dogs. All of them rescued. Each one different, broken in its own way. And somehow, I felt like I was saving a piece of myself through them. The neighbors didn't seem to mind at first. I kept my property clean, built a proper fence, and spent most of my time tending the garden or sitting on the porch watching the sunset with the pack at my feet. For a while, life was peaceful. But peace doesn't stay long in a neighborhood governed by people who need control more than they need kindness. The new HOA president, Karen Mitchell, arrived that spring. She was the kind of woman who measured worth in inches of trimmed grass and shades of matching shutters. I could tell she saw my yard not as a home, but as a problem. The first notice came in May, typed formal, sealed with the HOA logo, exceeding allowable pet number. I thought it was a misunderstanding. The rules said 4 pets. I had 6, but others had more: cats, birds, even a man down the street with 8 ferrets. No one else was targeted. By June, the letters came weekly. Then came fines. Then threats of eviction. The final letter warned that if I didn't remove the animals, the HOA would pursue legal action and recommend property seizure. That night, I sat with Benny and the others under the stars, my hands trembling. I had lost enough in life, my wife, my peace, and now they wanted to take my family too. That was the night I decided I never meant to become the man everyone whispered about. It started with one stray, thin, frightened, shivering under my porch on a cold December night. I called him Benny. After my wife passed, the silence in the house was unbearable. Benny filled it with life again. His paws clicked across the floor, his tail thumped against the furniture, and his soft sighs at night reminded me that I wasn't completely alone. Then came another, and another. Word travels fast among strays, I guess. Before long, I had 6 dogs. All of them rescued. Each one different, broken in its own way. And somehow, I felt like I was saving a piece of myself through them. The neighbors didn't seem to mind at first. I kept my property clean, built a proper fence, and spent most of my time tending the garden or sitting on the porch watching the sunset with the pack at my feet. For a while, life was peaceful. But peace doesn't stay long in a neighborhood governed by people who need control more than they need kindness. The new HOA president, Karen Mitchell, arrived that spring. She was the kind of woman who measured worth in inches of trimmed grass and shades of matching shutters. I could tell she saw my yard not as a home, but as a problem. The first notice came in May, typed formal, sealed with the HOA logo, exceeding allowable pet number. I thought it was a misunderstanding. The rules said 4 pets. I had 6, but others had more: cats, birds, even a man down the street with 8 ferrets. No one else was targeted. By June, the letters came weekly. Then came fines. Then threats of eviction. The final letter warned that if I didn't remove the animals, the HOA would pursue legal action and recommend property seizure. That night, I sat with Benny and the others under the stars, my hands trembling. I had lost enough in life, my wife, my peace, and now they wanted to take my family too. That was the night I decided I wouldn't give in, and that decision would set off a storm I never saw coming. I never expected much to come from it. I simply wrote the truth. A short post on a local community page, explaining how the HOA was threatening to evict an old man and his rescue dogs. I added a photo of me sitting with the dogs in the backyard. Nothing dramatic, just real. I went to bed that night, not thinking much of it. By morning, everything had changed. My phone buzzed nonstop. Hundreds of comments, messages, shares. People from the next town over, the next state even, were outraged. Strangers were offering help, donations, and legal advice. Animal rescue groups began tagging the HOA, demanding answers. News outlets called. Local reporters came by. My quiet street turned into a line of cars, filled with supporters. People dropped off treats, toys, and signs that read, "Let them stay." And Karen, she panicked. The HOA issued a statement claiming my post was misleading. They said I was creating unnecessary drama. But every attempt to control the story only made things worse. Screenshots spread. The internet doesn't forgive cruelty to animals. By the end of the week, a petition had gathered over 30,000 signatures, demanding the HOA reverse its decision. But the attention came with consequences. HOA board members began receiving angry calls. Some resigned. Karen's email leaked online. She blamed me publicly, saying I weaponized sympathy. The truth was simpler. I hadn't fought her with hate. I just told the truth. And truth spreads faster than fear. Still, I knew the fight wasn't over. Because the next letter that came wasn't from the HOA. It was from their lawyer. The envelope was heavy, professional, cold. Notice of pending legal action. They were accusing me of violating community standards, causing public nuisance, and defamation of the association. It would have crushed a younger man. But at 72, you start understanding what matters and what doesn't. Losing a house didn't scare me anymore. Losing the dogs did. I reached out to one of the people who had commented on my post, a retired attorney who specialized in property law. He offered to help, pro bono. When he read through the HOA bylaws, he laughed softly. The so-called for-pet limit was never properly ratified. It wasn't legally enforceable. All those fines, all those threats, they were built on nothing. We filed a response. The case would take time, he said, but I wasn't alone anymore. Meanwhile, the town had turned against the HOA. People began attending board meetings, demanding answers. News vans lined the streets. Karen's carefully curated image started to crumble under the weight of public outrage. But she refused to back down. She doubled down instead. She began calling animal control, trying to have my dog seized for noise and aggression. Each time, the officers came, saw calm, healthy dogs, and left shaking their heads. I could see it in her eyes when we crossed paths. She wasn't fighting for the neighborhood anymore. She was fighting because she couldn't stand losing control. Then one morning, I woke to find my fence vandalized. Spray paint, slurs, and one message in bold red letters. "Get out or we'll make you." For the first time, I felt real fear. But fear has a way of summoning courage. And that courage was about to spark something much bigger than me. The following weekend, I woke to the sound of engines, laughter, and barking. Not from my yard, but from the street outside. I opened the curtains and froze. Dozens of people stood outside my house. Rescue workers, families, local reporters, and neighbors I'd never met. They were holding signs, handmade, bright, full of color. Protect the rescues. Justice for Arthur. End HOA abuse. Someone had organized a peaceful protest. They called it the Paws Parade. Dogs of every breed filled the street. Big ones, tiny ones, some in wheelchairs, some wagging their tails like banners of joy. The air was thick with emotion, music playing, laughter mingling with tears. For the first time in months, I smiled without fear. News cameras caught everything. The story exploded nationwide. Animal rights groups joined in. Politicians posted statements of support. Donations poured in to cover legal fees, veterinary bills, even improvements for my home. And under that massive spotlight, the HOA fractured. Several board members resigned, citing ethical concerns. Karen disappeared from public view for weeks. When she finally resurfaced, her voice was no longer the one everyone feared. It was the one everyone mocked. But for me, it wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about seeing people come together for something pure. The dogs who had once been unwanted had united an entire community. As the sun set over the crowd that day, I realized I hadn't just saved them. They had saved me too. The weeks after the protest settled into a quiet that felt almost unreal. Cedar Brook Lane, once alive with barking dogs, honking cars, and chanting voices, was now calm. Even the wind seemed gentler, the leaves moving without the urgency they'd carried before. I woke early, as I always had, with a lingering chill of dawn and a sense of watchfulness that never quite left me. My dogs, Benny, Scout, Daisy, Max, Luna, and Buddy, stretched beside me on the porch. Their soft breaths mingled with the morning air, a rhythm I had grown to depend on, grounding me in a world that had been spinning too fast. The case had been dismissed. The lawyer who had helped me said it was an open-and-shut victory. The HOA's threats were baseless from the start. But the relief I felt wasn't celebratory. It was quiet, reflective. I had gained something precious, yes, the right to keep my dogs, the acknowledgement of truth, the community's support. But I had also carried months of fear, stress, and the gnawing uncertainty of losing everything I had left in the world. Karen resigned quietly. No public apology at first, just a notice that she had stepped down for personal reasons. Eventually, the board issued a formal statement of regret, polished and impersonal, acknowledging the distress caused. Words alone could never capture what I had endured, yet they marked the end of the battle. The neighborhood had changed in subtle ways. People who had once ignored each other began greeting one another in the street. Children who had watched the protest from a distance now visited with small gifts for the dogs or invitations to play in the yard. Even new dogs appeared in homes down the block, some rescued from shelters, inspired by the story of our fight. The town had become a little warmer, a little kinder. And yet, peace came with its own weight. I never saw Karen again. Sometimes, in the periphery of my vision, I imagined her walking past, clipboard in hand, scowling, a reminder of the shadow that had once hung over us. But hatred has a way of poisoning the heart. I chose not to dwell on her, not to waste what remained of my energy on bitterness. I had learned that victory felt empty if it was built on cruelty returned. The dogs aged, as all living things do. Benny's muzzle grew gray. Daisy developed a limp, and Luna, the youngest, began to slow her runs around the yard. Their lives were finite, their time with me a delicate gift. I cherished every morning, every nudge, every sloppy kiss. In their loyalty, I found a reflection of the love I had lost with my wife, and the world felt bearable once more. I spent afternoons writing in journals, documenting everything, the letters, the threats, the protest, and the way the town had rallied around me, not for fame or record, but to remember the truth of those months. How ordinary people can rise together for something right. How small acts of courage can ripple outward, touching lives far beyond the moment. Winter arrived slowly, coating the street in frost and quiet. The fire in my living room crackled nightly as I watched the dogs sleep in the yard, their warm bodies forming a protective circle around the house. Even in the cold, the world felt less threatening than it had during the height of Karen's crusade. I often reflected on how fear can push a person to extraordinary lengths, and how kindness, patient, stubborn kindness, can push back even harder. The cherry tree in my yard bloomed again in the spring, its delicate pink petals falling softly onto the grass, covering the marks of past struggles. I buried Benny under its branches, his memory alive in the blooms and in my heart. Daisy Max and the others eventually joined him in their own quiet farewells, leaving Luna and me as the last witnesses of our shared journey. I thought often about my wife, and how she had taught me that love leaves footprints, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, but always enduring. Life returned to routine. The town's attention moved on to newer stories, fresher conflicts, while I remained in my small corner of Cedar Brook Lane, tending the yard, walking Luna, and greeting neighbors who now stopped to smile. My house was no longer just my home. It had become a symbol, not of battle, but of perseverance, compassion, and the quiet power of standing your ground. One day, a letter appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a few simple words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. No signature. No explanation. I recognized the handwriting, the careful loops of each letter. It was hers. Karen. I folded the note carefully and placed it with the rest of the letters I had kept, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that people can change, even if silently. Forgiveness doesn't always require conversation. Sometimes it requires only acknowledgement and the willingness to let go. The years passed. Time is patient, unrelenting. Dogs grew older and passed, one by one, leaving soft imprints on the heart. Luna remained, her gray muzzle a testament to resilience and loyalty. I watched her every day, finding comfort in her presence, in her unwavering companionship. On evenings when the sky turned gold and the wind whispered through the trees, I sat on the porch, reflecting on everything: the struggle, the protest, the fleeting taste of fear, and the unexpected joy of support. The street was calm, the air carrying faint laughter from children playing down the lane. I could hear the distant bark of a neighbor's dog and the soft hum of life continuing. I realized that the fight hadn't just been about the dogs or my home. It had been about courage, about standing for what you believe in even when it seems futile. It had been about community, about the extraordinary ways people come together for something pure. And in its quiet, bittersweet aftermath, it had been about love, the kind that never truly leaves you, no matter how many losses you endure. I leaned back, feeling the weight of the years and the gentle warmth of a life lived fully, imperfectly, but honestly. Luna rested her head on my knee, and I whispered softly, as I had so many times before, "We did all right." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. The wind rustled the cherry blossoms, carrying with it memories, grief, and hope. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet surround me. The battle was over. The town had learned, and I had survived. And as long as love remained in the hearts of those who remembered, nothing, not fear, not cruelty, not time, could ever take that away. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Luna sighed contentedly at my feet, and I knew, in that perfect, fleeting moment, that everything, every struggle, every tear, every victory, had led to this fragile, enduring peace.